It's your girl, your host, Jocelyn, y como siempre, I am so grateful you are here and tuning into this conversation that we're about to have with our very special guest, Hilary Jackendoff, who is an ashram-trained yoga nidra and meditation teacher, a teacher trainer, and human design reader, amongst other many beautiful gifts and offerings that she shares with the world. Hilary, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
How's your spirit in this moment? How are you feeling?
My spirit it's grateful. My spirit is grateful. Yeah, I'm grateful to be here and to have the opportunity to share some of the tools, teachings that I have received that have been really transformative for me. So I'm spreading the word is what it's all about, and getting a chance to connect with people is my deepest joy.
Yeah. Well, we start all of these conversations with gratitude, so you're already in that mode. Are there any other expressions of gratitude that you feel called to express?
I am grateful for a lifetime of self-inquiry that has brought me to self-love.
I love that. I love that. And I love how that is in alignment with really how I want this conversation to go. Because I feel like it all ultimately comes down to oneself. And so for you to express that your lifetime of self-inquiry ultimately landed at self-love, I love that. That's a perfect way to start this conversation. And I want to start by sharing a bit of your background that you share on your website. So you grew up in South Jersey and you studied philosophy, mysticism, and religion in college. And then in 2008, after a transformative experience with Yoga Nidra at an ashram in New Zealand, you traveled to an ashram in India. You lived as a sannyasin?
That is exactly right.
Okay, a yogic monk at an ashram for 2 years while completing a 1,500-hour yoga and meditation teacher training. You spent 8 years fully immersed in a guru-based Tantric Yogic tradition, but your relationship with spirituality transformed when you realized that lineage and guru didn't have all the answers. And this last paragraph that you wrote down is really what I want to focus on and love. You wrote, "I learned how to be my own teacher and how to trust myself." This, of course, is a much longer story, and it's been the single most important piece of wisdom I've integrated over the last 15 years. Obviously, there's just so much to unpack there, and I know that some listeners are going to want to hear all about your time at the ashram and traveling the world, and we are going to touch on that a bit. But again, I feel like this last bit is the most important bit, not only in this conversation, but in life in general, when we get to that point where we are really focusing on awakening the teacher within. I'm excited to expand on that with you. But first, tell us, what was one of your most unexpected takeaways from your time at the ashram?
I mean, it was, despite sort of the hard lessons that unfolded through some spiritual trauma, for lack of a better phrase, my time at the ashram and the teachers that I learned from were some of the most, it was a wonderful time. And my teachers were incredible human beings and incredibly wise teachers. So despite, the challenges that that unfolded over time, my personal experience with, with the ashram, with living there as a resident, as a sannyasin, and the people that were in my daily life, nothing but, they pressed my buttons, but that was, that's part of it. It's a fine line, but I want to be clear that like my experience was overwhelmingly positive. Because I think that, when people get a sense of where I've landed in terms of traditional lineage and in terms of guru-based teachings, it can seem like I'm sort of trying to take them down. And that's very much not the case. Like for my personal experience, I could not be more grateful for the experience that I had. It was one of the most fun times of my life. Was absolutely the most transformative. It was the most connected I've ever felt to spirit. It was the most connected I've ever felt to community. It was beautiful. But, that being said, so the single most kind of impactful lesson, I think you asked maybe, really just how to hold space for myself. Because in daily life, we're so quick to, and I do believe that healing happens in community, right? But we also have to know how to hold space for ourselves. Because we tend to be so quick to reach out to another, to, distract ourselves from what we're thinking or feeling, from what we're going through, to seek easy answers, to outsource our wisdom. And we become dependent on outside influences to, soothe our pain, to soothe our suffering, to get us through that difficult moment, that difficult experience. And, ultimately, I'm not somebody that believes that we're like, that we're solitary islands and we must soldier through and do it ourselves. Not at all. But we do need to learn to trust ourselves, and we do need to learn to trust our strengths. And, in those large moments of life, of great loss, of great pain, of, things that can really take us down, that's a different conversation, right? But for small things, we need to train ourselves. We need to build our strength. We need to build our capacity to hold difficulty and to hold it on our own without fear and without needing to distract ourselves, to dissociate from the discomfort of it. This is what being human is. And in those moments of larger difficulty, right, we can lean on community, of course, and we have to. But on like a day-to-day level, we need to know how to hold space for ourselves. And learning how to hold space for ourselves, if we're in the healing arts, is what actually enables us to hold space for others when they actually need it, right? And to guide them to develop that same level of trust in their own capacity to hold difficulty. So I learned that because nobody at the ashram would hold space for you.
Yeah. And that's such an important takeaway. And that really is kind of like what I got from that section in what you shared in your about page on your website. I didn't read all of it sentence for sentence, but in the beginning, it kind of sounds like, you traveled the world trusting, hoping I would find my path. And I feel like that's how a lot of our quote unquote spiritual journeys kind of begin, is this search for purpose. Like, what is when you get to that point where it's like, what is my purpose in life? Or what, if I were to pave my own path, what would that look like? What if I am in alignment with my quote unquote higher self, what does that look like? This like search for like deeper meaning. And I think so often when we do begin that search, we are kind of obviously amidst the exploration, we are, looking for what's outside of us, to kind of find where we see ourselves. But there is that fine line, and there is that need for discernment to get to the point where we're not dependent on the exploration outside of us to find what's within.
Yeah.
And it seems like ultimately, I mean, for you to have committed yourself to become a yogic monk, that's a big commitment to your spiritual journey. Having done that for 2 years, and also all the other, investments you've made in these experiences. I feel like, as you mentioned, ultimately kind of like brought you back to yourself and realizing you needed to find that teacher within. And I mean, in the past couple of years, there's been such a shift in spirituality and wellness. And I do feel like these conversations are so important to have in regards to making sure that we're not becoming dependent on all of these like readers and quote unquote teachers that are out there who we don't know, that I feel so many have become dependent on, because these have been really challenging years. And I caught myself like towards the end of 2020, like becoming very dependent on energy readings on YouTube. And I was like watching them consistently because I was going through like a really deep heartbreak. But then it got to the point where it was very redundant and repetitive. And I noticed that it was kind of stalling my growth, kind of depending on these messages from someone else, that I kind of was not listening to the messages that were coming up within me. And I had this shift like, wait, I need to listen to myself. What messages am I receiving? Like it does get to a point, like you said, where it becomes a distraction from us actually feeling what we need to feel, and turning to ourselves the way that we need to.
Yeah. And it's like, the search for meaning, the search for purpose, the search for fulfillment, the search for spiritual connection. It's not an easy search. It's, and it's also in a lot of ways a luxury and a privilege to be able to even embark on it. That's just an aside, but like, it's not an easy search. It's not an easy path. A lot of people don't tread it, or they tread it in a way that, outsources their authority, so to speak. And, they take the sort of traditional route of religion, where the answers are given, where things are simple. People want simple answers so much. That's what they're all seeking when they, whether it's on Instagram, whether you follow those, as I see it, terrifying people that say that they're channeling, beings from other dimensions. And it's not that I doubt that exists. It's just that, why do we need it? Is there not enough here to learn from? Do we not have enough wisdom that we can receive? Do we not have enough medicine that is in this present moment, if we're truly aware? That we need to go on Instagram and watch some, dead-eyed dude talk about the Arcturians and the messages that they have for us. I'm like, it's people seeking easy answers. It's people seeking solace. And I understand it, but it's not the way. The spiritual path, the path to, a meaningful connection, a meaningful personal connection to the divine, cannot be outsourced. It is an internal job. The answers are not simple. They are nuanced. They unfold over time. It's like, it does. We're kind of touching a nerve, because this really fires me up, and I'm drinking Blue Lotus. Uh, so
Yeah, it can be a touchy, it can trigger some people who may be listening to this and may
yeah,
be feeling like, we're telling them that they're being avoidant in some way.
it's part of the path. I
It
did it.
is.
I did it for
Yeah,
years.
same.
I
Hmm.
did it. I sought the easy answers from the guru. If Instagram had been a thing in my early 20s, I'm sure I would have found the people on Instagram that would tell me the easy answers that, would relieve the internal pressure and the pain and the confusion of being human temporarily. But then as you grow, you realize that it's not the whole picture, and that it's there aren't any shortcuts on this path. It's the path of a lifetime. And each of us has our own unique lessons to learn. And we have our own unique process that we need to discover to learn those lessons. And it's like, being human is really hard. It's really confusing. It can feel pointless. It can feel meaningless. And we have to give it meaning. And we can only truly give it meaning and find that purpose in our lives when we look within. And when we learn what our uniqueness is, how life wants to be lived through us, when we can discover that and we can step into that, that's where the answers are. When we learn how we are designed to express our uniqueness in this world, when we learn how we are made to serve, when we learn how we can be, radiant beings who send just beams of light into the world that touch everyone who comes across our path. When we can know how to be that, that is the spiritual practice. When we can be that in our everyday lives and express that to every being that comes across our path, that's living in awareness, that's living in presence, and that generates gratitude. That generates love of the other, love of self, love of being alive. That's what does it. And, I hope that no one listening gets upset or feels that it's an attack to say that, relying on external there are no easy answers. There are no easy answers. The only easy answer that exists is that we have to be love. That's the only easy answer. But to be love, that is the process. That is the path. That is the practice. And yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to know, and this is what I realized when I was reliant and dependent on these readers, is I realized that I was giving my power away in doing so because I wasn't tuning into my own intuition. I wasn't, because these readings are one, we don't know what they're channeling. We don't know their own spiritual path and if they've genuinely, what their intentions are. And we're all just so unique that we really, the one person that's going to understand us the most is our own selves. And that in and of itself is, I feel, enough to be like, you know what, I do need to turn to myself to see how I'd like to move forward, or see or discover what it is that my purpose is, or what kind of healing I need to do and how I need to do it. And speaking of purpose, like what have you landed on regarding purpose in life. And where I'm currently at with that is that we have individual purposes and we have collective purposes. And also that we don't necessarily just have one purpose in this life, that our purpose evolves as we evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my current beliefs regarding purpose.
You're a manifesting generator, right?
I am.
Nice. That's beautiful. No, it's true. Like we unfold, and our levels of understanding unfold. When I first started on this, like professionally, when I first started on this path, my mission was really simple. It was to spread yoga nidra to as many people as possible, so that they could learn what true relaxation and rest felt like, and realize the transformative power of knowing that. So that's sort of where I began. And, that was well over a decade ago. I mean, my first sort of introduction to the practice was in 2008, and I just started evangelizing from then on. But professionally, I didn't start teaching until, I guess, 2010 or 2010 or 11. It gets very fuzzy, like before, you got to scroll back real far for those markers in time. But that was where I began. And over the years, I've realized that what I really care about is guiding people to the tools and teachings, so that they can really develop self-awareness and bring their shadow to light, right? I'm personally not the person, I'm not the teacher for the people who are in the shadow. And I don't mean like, it's not where I excel. It's not where I'm best served. I'm for the people who are ready to step out of the shadow and bring it into the light, and are consciously in that space of deep self-awareness in each moment, attuned to where their shadow is expressing in their patterns, beliefs, and relationships. Mm-hmm. And then from there, from that foundation of self-awareness, we can move towards deep, deep self-acceptance while also moving to transform, right? It's both at the same time. It's a both and. Self-acceptance of exactly where we are in each moment, deep love for where we are on our path, while also moving forward and holding ourselves in that difficulty. And, that is the path of self-love, giving yourself that opportunity to accept yourself without resistance, while also moving towards your highest potential and the full expression of your gifts and authenticity in the world, so that you can be of service, so that you can live in love. So that's, part of it, and a big part of it, to release self-judgment, to release that pain of self-judgment, and hold our shadow with more light. And then my incarnation cross in human design is the right angle cross of Eden. And it's about bringing my vision of heaven on earth. And this is a big part of what I believe will create heaven on earth. And the other side of that is helping people to do this work, mm-hmm. so that they can actually show up in a radically different way in relationship, so that they can create peace and harmony in relationship with the other, so that they can see the other as they are and develop that same acceptance and compassion for the other as they develop for themselves. Mm-hmm. Because I think this is where this, we fall short in the spiritual space sometimes. We make it so focused on the self, and, you You can have a spiritual practice and still be a total asshole. I know a lot of people who are very much in that space, and they present in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Externally. But take a closer look, and it's like, how is this actually creating healing and spreading love? You know, and that to me is like where we really, like, if we're not able to bring it to our relationships, if we're not able to bring it to the stranger on the street, if we're not able to bring it to people that we disagree with, if we're not able to cultivate that presence and that pause to truly bring wisdom and discernment into how we view the other. So that's what I want. I want heaven on earth. I want people to be able to do that.
Same. And I really do. I've been meaning to write a poem about this, but I really do believe that we as humans are that bridge between heaven and earth, and that we do have a hand in creating a heaven on earth. And you explained all of that so beautifully. When I had this like strong, I mean, I've always desired to be of service, but it hit me even more deeply a couple of years ago. And my first response to that calling was, okay, I know that if I sincerely want to be of service the way that I'm envisioning, I need to work on myself, because one of the most important things that I've ever really fully realized and integrated is the truth that we can't show up for others in a way that we can't show up for ourselves. And that's one of like the first most important practices, I feel, which is like kind of what we're touching on, is like the practice of showing up for yourself. Because we really can't, in every way, we can't help someone else in a way that we haven't helped ourselves. We can't love someone else in a way that we haven't loved ourselves. We can't, that truth applies to everything. And that's why it really is so important that we do turn inward and, just focus on how it is that we're showing up for ourselves first and foremost. But I love that you mentioned that your first kind of like intention with your work and being of service was to kind of awaken others to how powerful true rest and relaxation is, because that honestly, like, I recently turned 29, and when I was reflecting on, what was one of like my biggest awakenings in 28, it's that relaxation is so powerful in so many different levels. And I love that you've had that awareness for quite some time. And that was like kind of like your first kind of inspiration to bring forth and awaken to others. So I do want to touch on that a bit. Like how did you come to that realization that rest and relaxation is so powerful to the point where you wanted others to know that same truth?
It was really my first experience with Yoga Nidra at that ashram in New Zealand. And, I had been practicing other meditations for some time. So this was in 2008. So, it wasn't as mainstream. There wasn't as much information out there. But I've sort of been on a devotional path since I was a child, and studying mysticism in college really was, I have a philosophy degree. But the single most impactful course that I took, one of them, actually there were three, was philosophy of mysticism. And it just like, it's like all of them said the same thing. These were, early Christian mystics, Sufi mystics, like from all traditions, they all said, all is love. All is love. Like, this pain, this suffering, this fear, everything that you're experiencing it's an illusion. Like it's well, I can't say it's an illusion because being human is fucking hard. But at the root of it all, we have to reconnect to love. We have to be love. We have to know love. And, meanwhile, I was very much very cognitive, very disconnected from my body, dealing with a lot of anxiety, dealing with a lot of insomnia, physical stuff happening in my body. And I couldn't get any relief. And when I tried to practice meditation, it just didn't do anything. Like it was partially the technique. But when I practiced Yoga Nidra for the first time, it straight away, I was like, oh my God, this is what it feels like to actually be relaxed and at peace and at ease on every level of my being. This is what it feels like to just be. This is what non-doing feels like. This is what it feels like to have an embodied experience of rest and ease. Obviously, that's me saying it 15 years later. But that's what the experience was. Like I touched into bliss. I touched into, sort of the spiritual benefits of Yoga Nidra the first time that I practiced. And I got really, really hooked, sometimes to the point of bliss chasing, which is another conversation on the spiritual path.
Yeah.
But that's really what it was. And I realized, like, I just saw so many people. I come from a town where there was a lot of drug use. Opioid crisis hit it really, really hard. I know it's ridiculous to say, but probably dozens of people that died from overdoses. And I realized that, like, and people drinking so much alcohol and just numbing out with really brain destroying television and just drinking and drugs and just all of it. And realizing that, like, because my little judgmental self would say, oh my God, they're so stupid, blah, blah, blah. Like, what are they doing with their lives? Wasting this life, blah, blah, like, like a little asshole. But I've tamed that.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown. But I realized, like, even at that age, when I first touched into Yoga Nidra, I was like, oh my God, like everybody's doing this because they're suffering so profoundly that they have to go into these altered states of consciousness through drugs, drinking, television. They have to put themselves effectively in a trance state of unconsciousness in order to get through the day and, navigate the pain of being human. And realizing that after receiving this tool and this embodied experience of, bliss and unbelievable levels of relaxation on, like, that I'd never touched before, that I'd never experienced, like the kind that you only experience when you're on, maybe psychedelics, right? And I laid down on the floor, and just like that, I was in this experience. And I realized that Yoga Nidra is the tool that can give that to the masses in such a powerful, accessible way, with no barrier to entry. People can receive that experience and learn how to unhook from those unconscious ways of navigating the pain of being human.
Thank you for sharing all that. Could you tell us a bit of, like, what's coming up for you in this moment?
Oh, many emotions. It's just sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sad for the people that didn't find it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I really appreciate the honesty that you expressed from like that shift in perspective of like realizing that people are essentially just trying to find a way to cope with the suffering that they're experiencing.
Yeah. With the tools that they have. And some
Yeah.
of those tools are really shitty.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I think one of the things with spiritual practices and spiritual tools and teachings is it can seem really far off for people.
Mm-hmm.
It can seem like, like, oh, I got to read all these books and I got to go to all these classes and I got to, spend all this money that I don't have. And that's part of why I'm so stressed and overwhelmed. And it's like, and meditation, everybody knows how good it is for them. Everybody, no matter their level of education, no matter what socioeconomic class they're in, everyone at this point in time on this planet knows that meditation is good for you, right? Everybody knows. And yet there's a barrier to entry because it's hard and because it seems weird and because, you think you have to do it a certain way. You have to like sit up straight and, have a special mat and have a special cushion. And like, there's still these just incorrect assumptions around what meditation is and what it can feel like. And a lack of understanding about the practices that can actually help you immediately for free.
Let's take a moment, let's take a breather and talk about our partner, Athletic Greens, who supports this podcast, this community, the conversations we have here. And I'm so grateful for them because they introduced me to their product called AG1, which has been a game changer for me and my overall optimal health and well-being. AG1 is a product that I've been taking for a few months now in the morning when I get home from the gym and before I have breakfast. In just one scoop of AG1, I am absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help me start my day right. This special blend of ingredients supports our gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy, recovery, focus, aging, all the things. And I have definitely noticed the impact that it has on my energy. I love it so much. I wouldn't be sharing this product with you if I didn't. And also what I love about it is that it's lifestyle friendly. So whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, it's friendly for your lifestyle choice. And it contains less than 1 gram of sugar, no GMOs, no nasty chemicals or artificial anything. It also supports better sleep quality and recovery, as well as mental clarity and alertness. Honestly, y'all, it is such a great investment. And yes, it does taste good. And I'm not just saying that because I know sometimes these products be tasting funky, but AG1, y'all, I'm telling you, I actually look forward to taking it every single morning. And it's just so great to know that it really is contributing goodness and greatness to my mind, body, and spirit because it's all interconnected, right? So right now, y'all, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different supplements and pills to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/SWG. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/SWG to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I have left a link in the description below. Now, let's get back into this whew, real good conversation with Hilary. I'd love for you to tell us a bit about Yoga Nidra, because I mean, there's different styles of yoga. And like meditation, yoga is also, I feel like, misperceived in many ways. But tell us specifically a bit about what exactly Yoga Nidra is.
So, like different styles of yoga, there are different styles of Yoga Nidra. As a meditation technique, there are different lineages of yoga that have, sort of offered different pathways, different techniques. And I have to make the slight differentiation because Yoga Nidra is two things. It is the sort of common name for a particular type of meditation practice, and it is a state of consciousness unto itself. So it's in the yogic tradition, in the yogic texts, Yoga Nidra is considered, it's referred to as the state of consciousness where there is awareness in deep sleep. So it's very much a trance state where there's sort of where the conscious thinking mind recedes, where the body is in a deep state of relaxation, and where you have the opportunity to maybe work with the subconscious mind in a more intentional way. So I like to point this out because there are a lot of people who are teaching Yoga Nidra untrained. And you take a yoga teacher training because you want to learn how to work with the body in the waking state safely.
Mm-hmm.
You take a Yoga Nidra teacher training because you're learning how to effectively guide people into different states of consciousness that they may never have experienced before. And when we're working with altered states of consciousness, there's an enormous burden of responsibility and an enormous, number of ethical implications that need to be fully understood by the facilitator. So I'm just dropping that in because it's a safety issue. It's an ethical issue. This is a really powerful practice, and it's an incredibly transformative practice. It's working on every level of your being all at once. And, it's a fully guided meditation. So even when you're just practicing the meditation and you're lying down, right? So no barrier to entry, you just get like unbelievably cozy and like just, oh yes, melty in your little rest nest. And you just receive, you just allow yourself to let go. It's ultimately a practice of letting go of, the holding that we're carrying in the body, the mind, the heart, the spirit, the psyche, and allowing ourselves to drop into a state of pure non-doing on every level of our being, welcoming, witnessing what is present, and perhaps dropping into a state of pure awareness where our sort of, shall we say, limited self, I don't like limited self, our personal self can sort of get a little break, can sort of step out for a minute, and we can touch into an embodied experience of, of the divine through rest. So that's really like, I know I kind of went all over the place, but hopefully, I'm assuming your listeners have a spiritual practice, right?
Yeah.
But it's an incredibly powerful practice, and it's incredibly easy, and it hits all of the pain points that we're experiencing as modern human beings in this world, around difficulties with sleep, around disconnection from our body, stress and anxiety, healing of trauma, disconnection from source, limiting beliefs, patterns of behavior, right? All of it. It addresses all of it. It is such a deep and rich practice. Like it's so multi-layered. You cannot even imagine how dope it is.
Yeah.
Until you experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy. You just lay there and it's free. Like, sure, you can go to one of my classes and send me a couple bucks. You can go to a workshop. You can come on a retreat with me, whatever. But like, you can also do it at home for free on Insight Timer or with YouTube, you know, but please note, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'll just find a teacher on Insight Timer or YouTube, make sure they are trained. Go check them out before you pop something on, because there's a lot of people that are just reading scripts, and there's a lot of people that are not embodying it. And there's a lot of people that are, you could do better. There's a lot of people that are leading this practice out there. There's so many beautiful teachers who are so well trained and embody this practice, live and breathe it, and offer it to the world for free. Mm-hmm. So find those.
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, in this conversation, like, you've already kind of been able to notice this about you, but I want to make it clear that you are a reflection of a teacher, a guide with integrity. And that's so important. And a couple of things that I want to point out is, one, you understanding the responsibility of guiding others. And two, you having done that work on your own self first and sincerely putting that into practice before showing up as a teacher, as a guide for others. And I feel like those are things that we all need to really look out for when turning to these people. Because with Yoga Nidra, that's like you handing over your subconscious, you know, and that's not something to take lightly. And with all of these, you know, with all of these practices, you know, when you are turning to somebody to assist you in you're handing over your consciousness, your subconsciousness, your healing, your spirit. Like, these are all, this is not something you take lightly. It's something that's very, really important to be mindful of. And you mentioned that, you know, we're talking about Yoga Nidra, we've been talking about rest and relaxation, and one of the things that I learned about the importance of relaxation is that it opens me up to receive. It helps me heal my receptivity to love, to healing, to source, to so many things, and also to practicing true surrender. And this is something that's in your bio that I wanted to bring up. Is in your bio, you have letting go is learned. I'm talking about your Instagram bio. And you also have honor your energy, rest. And I wanted to ask, you know, for you to have put that in your bio must be that it's important to you. And it's exactly what we're talking about now. And I'm curious to know your own interpretation and meaning of, you know, when you write letting go is learned.
Yeah. It's not natural to us. It's like part of the challenge of being human is trying to control things, not trusting in the flow of our own path, trying to control others. It's a gripping, it's a clinging, you know, it's an attachment. And obviously we are human, we have attachments. It is absurd to think that we can live in a completely detached way. That is, you know, I think that's a gross misinterpretation of, you know, many spiritual teachings on non-attachment. Mm-hmm. And also many of those spiritual teachings on non-attachment were intended for renunciates.
Mm.
Like, for example, in the yogic lineage, sannyasins, swamis, like who are fully committed to the yogic path to ashram life, they say God, Guru, Ashram. That's the Holy Trinity, right? It's God, Guru, Ashram. They don't go to funerals or weddings. They don't engage with the celebrations of, sort of mundane life. Like it's the desire to always be in the spiritual and finding the spiritual to be somehow separate from the mundane. And in the tantric tradition, true tantra, not neo-tantra, I have to make that distinction. Spirituality and everyday life are meant to be together. It's the divine, the sacred in everyday life, right? Like it comes back to attuning to gratitude, attuning to presence. Every single moment can be sacred. So to me, I have a difficult time with, some of the teachings in spiritual life around non-attachment, because I believe that they can be misinterpreted and sort of taken to be like, you have to cultivate this, veneer of equanimity where you do not participate in the joys or the sadnesses because you are non-attached, because you are equanimous, because you are spiritual. And I see that in certain spiritual communities. And I believe truly and deeply that to live life fully and to really embody divinity in this human experience, to really bring that sense of the sacred into everyday life, there has to be joy. So it's like, yeah. So it's kind of an aside, but also related. But letting go is learned. Letting go is, we actually find more joy when we learn how to let go.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I feel like many people, I feel like our human family has definitely been challenged with that in these recent years, is the challenge of truly letting go. And I'd love to ask you, if you're open to sharing, what's one of the most difficult things that you've surrendered?
One of the most difficult things that I've surrendered, honestly, I mean, well, there's a lot, but I think what's coming to me now is my spiritual identity. Because, I'm getting emotional again. Letting go, like, my spiritual lineage, that path that I was on for the entirety of my 20s, was incredibly meaningful. And as I shared at the beginning, I had a really good time. It was a really powerful, positive, healing, affirming, transformative, beautiful experience. It was everything. It was and the most incredible sangha, the most incredible teachers, the sense of purpose, the sense of meaning, the sense of identity. And shifting my relationship to guru, to lineage, meant that I had to let go of that. It's always a part of me, but fuck, it was amazing. This is why, like, I come, when I say that people are looking for easy answers, I say it because I did it. And I loved it. And it was amazing. And it was so good. It was so good. Like, there is no judgment for people looking for easy answers, because having a sense of spiritual identity and having a community that, provides easy answers feels amazing. And when it's a good community, even if it has some shadow, but it came to the point where I had to be in integrity and shift my relationship to that. So that was really hard.
Yeah. And it seems like it's still an ongoing process. And there is a particular grief to letting go of a part of you that contributed so much goodness to your life, but you know you need to let it go. And especially if it's a part of you that touches your identity, because it's you also grieving letting your own self go in a way.
Yeah. It's an ego trip. It's kind of what it boils down to, right? It's letting go of the spiritual ego is the hardest ego to let go of. My God. It's really hard, especially when it's so nuanced. But it's not, this is the thing about the spiritual path. It's not easy and it's always unfolding. Mm-hmm. And there's just so much wisdom that we can gain when we're really showing up for it. Mm-hmm. When we're really showing up in presence, and when we have the courage to take the wool off of our own eyes. Yeah. It's definitely I think a big part of my healing has been in the way that I have chosen to hold space as a teacher. Mm. And it's certainly not easy, because people really do prefer easy answers. When they ask a question, then they get this long, convoluted, nuanced tangent. And then I'm like, but ultimately find your own answer. And they're like,
And I think that's another reflection of a teacher or a guide with integrity too, is one that leads you back to your own self and discovering and empowering the own teacher and guide that each and every single one of us has within us.
Yeah. And it's, honestly, I've learned so much through human design about how to really understand the other, and how to understand the other's process and the other's path, and understand how different it is to mine, and how, the wisdom that I have and the guidance that I can offer. I've let go of the attachment of needing to always be guiding. And that's my projector deconditioning, is letting go of that attachment to always be guiding, letting people make their own mistakes, letting go of their results, because it is not about me. And it's people have to find their own way. And I think that's why I get so stoked about human design, because God, this is could be a totally different podcast, but I get so stoked about it because it gives people a new lens to look through, so that they can start to consider, how they're best suited to walk on their path. It's not an answer system, right? It's let me try that out. Maybe there's some merit there. It gives them something else to rely on, just on a very basic level, even, to start to build trust in themselves, so that they don't continue to build this pattern of outsourcing their answers to teachers, to traditions, to books, to, whatever it might be. And they start to trust themselves just in small moments to listen to their body, to listen to their intuition, to, listen to what they feel drawn to listen to what lights them up, instead of taking someone else's advice who is offering their guidance through the lens of their own perception and through the lens of their own experience. So yeah, for me, it's actually because I've been doing this for a while and working with clients, and it can get very amorphous. Mm-hmm. If you work with clients as a spiritual, whatever I am, supporter, so catchy, great for branding.
I like that, actually.
Spiritual supporter. If when you're working with clients in this space, it gets very amorphous very quickly. And people project things onto you, and people don't understand your scope of practice. And all of a sudden, you're in a very different space than what you signed up for and what you're qualified for. So for me, introducing people to human design as a framework for self-inquiry that then we can use to support work together, but it always points them back to themselves. And yeah, it's really an interesting way to it's a new way to work with people that I'm really enjoying, because I'm trying to do it in a way that makes sure that people don't try to that they don't try to put themselves in a human design box, like that they don't, because people get really hooked into labels and, well, I'm this, so then this, and it's like, well, maybe.
Yeah.
Is that true for you in this moment?
Right, exactly. Like more so just using it as a tool for deeper self-inquiry. And yeah, I feel like everything kind of comes down to, does this feel true to me in this moment? And if it does, continue to explore it. And then when it no longer feels true, allow yourself to let it go. Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought up human design, because I know that human design is a big part of your offerings and your work. And I wanted to make sure that we touch on it in this conversation before we come to a close. And I feel like you expressed it again so beautifully on kind of why it is that you love human design and how it's helped you kind of navigate supporting others and leading them kind of back to themselves. Is there anything else regarding human design that you feel called to share in this moment? I know that's a whole other conversation, and there's so much we can expand on regarding just human design.
Oh my God. I know.
I'm genuinely looking forward to investing in a human design reading with you.
Oh my God. It would be such a delight. It's really fascinating. So I've been on personally, I'll just share a tiny bit of my personal story with it and why, because I only share pragmatic tools that really have resonated with me and have been really transformative for me. I've been on the self-inquiry path, so to speak, since I was little. And my mom won't listen to this interview, so I can say it. When my parents separated when I was 12, and my dad told me it was my fault on Halloween, that was fun. And then, it's a little trauma there. I was pretty fucked up. And so I begged for a therapist. I begged for a therapist.
That's really beautiful of you to have responded in that way.
Yeah, my mom said, no, talk to your friends. And I didn't, because they were 12.
Right.
In fact, I completely shut it down and didn't tell anybody. But I discovered astrology, and I started doing self-inquiry work. And, we didn't have a TV growing up, so we would go to the bookstore a lot as a family outing, and I really went down the rabbit hole in the New Age section at a very young age, and discovered, just a lot of really supportive, affirming, information around understanding who I was through the lens of astrology. And I stayed on that path for a while. And I actually thought I was going to go to school for astrology in Copenhagen after college. I went and investigated this astrology school, and I didn't go. I ended up at the ashram instead. And I kind of stopped my study of astrology and didn't really get a chance to go super deep, because when you come to the yogic tradition, they say, in the traditional yogic schools, they say that once you step onto the yogic path, your destiny changes. So I was like, okay, so astrology is not the vibe anymore. Like yoga is the vibe. And that was my answer for, a decade. Yoga, yoga, yoga. And I mean, I think I've made it clear, but like, we're not talking like the asana path. We're talking like, traditional yogic teachings. Yeah. So anyway, but astrology never actually showed me strategies for navigating daily life. It gave me insight into my personality. It gave me insight into, why I can never stop talking. My moon is in Gemini. Like I always want to be expressing what I'm thinking and feeling. Like
I'm a Gemini moon too.
Yeah, perfect. So like it helped me understand things. Scorpio rising, obsessed with mysticism and death. And yeah. So it helped me understand things, but it didn't give me tools to, support my daily life and make life more easeful, more joyful. It didn't. And then when I discovered human design, I was with my friend Trisha Carr. She is one of the only reflectors that I know. And she is just a wise, wise queen that is, you should talk to Trisha. She's amazing. But Trisha introduced me to human design. I was recording a course for Insight Timer at her recording studio. And we were procrastinating because that's what I do. Recording is hard for me. And she was like, have you heard of human design? And I was like, what's that? No. And she's like, let me put in your information. And she put it in and she's like, you're a projector. You're not here to work in the traditional sense. You're here to guide and you're here to be. And you work about 3 to 4 hours a day. And she just like told me a few of these, like just these few little phrases. And I felt like a weight was just lifted off my shoulders. Like all of the compare and despair that I had been feeling for years with my colleagues in LA who were just like, just crushing it in every sense of the word and like knew how to build a business and knew how to, start a platform for subscriptions and start a podcast and like all of these things that just seemed so easy for them and so hard for me. And like my friend, who was in the studio with us, not Trisha, another friend. And he's like, you're not done with that course yet? You've been working on it for like weeks, haven't you? And I'm like, months. And he's like, you can't just get that done in like a day. You can't just go in and just get it done. And I'm like, no, how can you? So I just had all of this shame and self-judgment around the way I was showing up and just never feeling like I was good enough, never feeling like there was something wrong with me for not having more energy, for not, just for not being able to live like most people. And basically human design just freed up so much energy for me because I was like, oh, I'm absorbing the aura of every single person that I'm in contact with. I become them. It depletes me. Rinse and repeat every time I leave my house. And I have 7 open centers. And it just provided me with strategies to actually manage my energy, honor my energy, work with my energy instead of against it, and stop comparing myself to others. So it helped me rise in self-love. And I was already pretty self-loving. So now I'm just like insufferable about self-love, but it freed up that space for me to really step into that and to understand my gifts in a new way and understand that they're different from other people's. And it's not that, others can't guide. It's just that we have different ways. And it's like, oh, my way is my way. And I'm not going to, serve my own heart by not trusting in that anymore,
Yeah.
or I think I said that right. You get it.
Yeah. 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 When I had a conversation with another human design guide, their name is Erin Claire Jones. She was on my podcast as well. And something that she brought up was that in learning human design, it affected her relationships, because not only was she able to accept herself more fully, but she was able to accept others, because she understood that we all just are different and unique. And yes.
Exactly. That's like looking at my dad's chart, looking at my mom's chart, my brother's chart, my husband's chart, my friends' charts. It has created so much space for grace in relationship. And, with my vision for, my work in the world being about creating peace and harmony, it's like, it's this beautiful lens to look at yourself through, to help release self-judgment, shame, compare and despair, rise in self-love. But then, it only works in relationship, because if you are in another person's aura, and we know that, like, even if you're not an energy worker, even if you're not super spiritual, we are reading each other's energy. We can cut the tension in the room with the knife, or it feels like a party in here. Like, regardless of whether someone is speaking or not, we are reading their aura. And people who aren't on this path even get it. They, like, as soon as you put it to them like that, they're like, oh yeah, of course I do. Yeah, I get a sense of whether I like someone or they're full of shit. Like, you just feel it. And like, if we're in someone's aura, we're in their energy. And even on Zoom, we're working non-locally here. We're in each other's energy field. And you can only work with human design in a meaningful way is if you understand the other and allow them to be themselves, and let go of your attachment to how you think they should behave, and allow them to be in their naturalness. Now, an issue that I take with human design is that sometimes people can sort of express it in a way that makes it seem like being in our naturalness doesn't require us to take responsibility for the impact of our energy on the other. And I have a big issue with that, because because if we're not all operating at the same level of awareness, that is conflict town.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of spiritual expressions that lead people to ultimately not take responsibility and accountability for themselves and create excuses for their actions and behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the long conversation we could have. But it's, so with human design, I feel like if you're really in alignment with using it as a tool to create, more love for yourself and more understanding and love for the other, it is a powerful system to explore. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like that's what it's all about, right?
That's it.
I feel like that's ultimately what it all is about.
Yeah.
Hilary, I honestly could speak to you for hours. This has been such a great conversation. I thank you so much for showing up in your vulnerability and honesty and openness, and sharing your wisdom and knowledge with us that you've accumulated for so long and invested your time and energy into. I really appreciate you. Before we get into the final 5, which are just 5 very brief fill in the blanks, I want to hold space for you in the case that there's anything you feel called to share that maybe we haven't touched on. If not, no worries, no pressure.
I think, just only, is this a time where I can say, if you want to learn about Yoga Nidra?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I know you offer experiences and events. Yes.
Yeah. So if anyone has been practicing Yoga Nidra and you're like, oh yeah, let's go deeper, I want to know all of that. And if you feel like I'm a teacher that could be for you, I offer Yoga Nidra teacher trainings. The next one is coming up in February, and dates are actually coming out this week. For that program, it's 100-hour, about 50 hours live on Zoom. And it's a really beautiful program that is not just for yoga and meditation teachers. I've trained scientists, coders, like everyone. And it's, so if you feel called to share yoga nidra, go deeper into that practice, I would love to have you. And I have a human design and yoga nidra retreat coming up in March, at the end of March in Mexico. And it's called Honor Your Energy. And it's going to be about learning what that actually feels like and putting it into practice in a retreat container in relation to others, and not being like, sure, I'll get a drink with you, when your whole body is like, absolutely not. That feels like a terrible plan. And learning how to actually practice it. So, and yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I'm really, really stoked for it. So if anybody feels called for either of those opportunities, I'd love to have you. And I offer other things as well. Let's bring on the final 5.
Yes. And I just want to know that this episode is going to come out in like early January, and all the links to get to Hilary and her work is going to be in the description below this episode. So definitely explore their site, because all the info you need is there. Okay. So final 5 is just 5 fill in the blank sentences. You could do one word or more than one word, but whatever first comes to mind, go ahead and allow that to be expressed. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
Okay. I am grateful to understand.
I am grateful to understand the importance of community.
I am grateful to give.
I am grateful to give my time and my heart.
I'm grateful to receive.
I am grateful to receive recognition and invitations.
Yes. I am grateful to overcome.
I am grateful to overcome holding myself back around speaking my truth because I don't feel like potentially engaging in conflict.
That's a major one for a lot of us.
Social media, man.
Yeah. And I am grateful to be.
I am grateful to be alive.
Same. It truly is such an honor and a miracle. And yeah, same. Hilary, thank you so much for this conversation. I'm so grateful for you and so excited to share this with everyone.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a really beautiful and deep time. I did not expect to cry twice about things.
I mean, we're Gemini moons. We recently had a full moon in Gemini. I have been emotional as well. So
there it is.
There it is.
There it is. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Hilary.